Hello and welcome to the very first ever KUMU Percussion online clinic. This is part one of our online marching percussion instructional series, and today we're going to be talking about the KUMU approach to battery percussion. My name's Matt Urquhart. I'm the co-caption head and battery arranger, and I'm here with a very good friend of mine, Danny Mark, who is the co-caption head and front ensemble arranger. If you are an incoming freshman, welcome. Can't wait to meet you in person. And if you're not attending Kutztown University in the fall, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope there's something you can bring back to your programs, all right? So before we get started, there's a couple people we would like you to meet.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Schwander, Director of Bands at Kutztown University. As the Director of the Kutztown University Marching Unit, I congratulate you on choosing to be a Golden Bear at KU and your decision to audition for the KUMU Percussion section. You will find your audition to be both rewarding and a challenge. The staff and student leadership are committed to providing you with the best musical, entertaining, and educational experience in collegiate marching band. So, prepare through practicing, do your best, and enjoy the experience as you share with the others who will be joining you on these virtual percussion clinics prepared by our staff and students. And remember, as we say in KUMU, do good, go Bears!
Good evening, Golden Bears. The time has come for our first virtual clinic on YouTube. My name is Jake Gehring. I'm one of the section leaders here in the Drumline. So happy to have you here tonight. You're going to learn a lot from Danny and Matt. It's going to be a great learning experience. If you have any questions at all, I'll be in the chat. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and have a great time here, okay?
Hey everybody, I'm Quinn, one of the section leaders for the Drumline, and I'm a senior chemistry major, and this is going to be my 4th year marching in the KUMU Drumline. And actually, this is also going to be my 10th year involved in the marching arts. I'm super excited to get the season started with you guys, and hopefully we'll be back at the field and starting our season as normal as we can. See you there.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a senior mathematics major, and this will be my 4th year in KUMU. Over the summer, my family and I have gone on a bunch of hikes, and I've listened to lots of new, amazing music. I can't wait to see all the amazing things we will accomplish this year.
Hi, I'm Doug. I'm a junior majoring in music performance, and this is my 3rd year as a member of KUMU. Music is a big part of my life. Both my parents are music teachers. In fact, my dad was my band director back in middle school. In addition to playing percussion, I also really like to make my own marimba mallets. It's a very relaxing process, and it's really fun to play with mallets that you made yourself. I'm really looking forward to this season. It's going to be fun to see some familiar faces, and I'm also really excited to meet all of the new members.
Thanks, guys, for your ongoing hard work and dedication to the program, and a very special thanks to Dr. Schwander for your ongoing support of KUMU Percussion. For those of you who don't know, we actually got a brand new set of drums over the last couple years, and that's largely due because of him and the KU Student Government Board. So thank you everyone involved for your ongoing support. Now, I just wanted to mention that this is one way to approach marching percussion. It's by no means the only way. So there may be some terms, there may be some things in our approach that differ from what you heard maybe in high school or your drum corps or indoor drumline, and that's okay. We say embrace it, have a good time, and let's have fun drumming. So let's talk about grip and playing zones. So first and foremost, in order to have a good grip, you need good posture. Now, we'll dive into some of those details when we meet in person, but for now, it's important to stand up straight, all right? Oftentimes, we walk around in daily life with bad posture, so make sure you can almost imagine like someone pulling the top of your head with a rope, all right, and that will straighten out your spine. Always stand up behind the drum with good posture, which brings me to my next point. If you don't have a tall snare stand, I mentioned it earlier, but definitely invest in one. This one's a Gibraltar one. I think it's like 50 or 60 bucks. Equally as important as the drum pad itself, because it allows you to approach the drum much like you would with it on you, okay? So with that said, let's talk about our right hand. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is take your stick and divide it into roughly thirds, all right? And that bottom third, where the butt is going to be roughly where your fulcrum point is. The fulcrum refers to the pivot point that the stick moves and will give you maximum rebound, okay? Notice if I move my fulcrum up too high, same stroke, my stick's not rebounding. If I move it down too low, it rebounds a little bit, but not quite the way we want it to. So for me, it's about a third, and it rebounds at its maximum potential. Now, if you have bigger hands, smaller hands, this fulcrum point may vary by size, but for the most part, for me, it's about a third, all right? So you're gonna wanna kind of explore this on your own with the back 3 fingers off and find that point that the stick rebounds at its max potential. So if you notice, let's see if I can get into this camera here. What you're gonna wanna do is have your thumb pad on the side of the stick, and you want that thumb pad going straight up the shaft of the stick. Next, you're gonna take your pointer finger, okay? Your pointer finger kind of almost makes a cross with your thumb. And then you're gonna take this gap and you're gonna close that gap. All right, this will generate some power and give you a good strong grip on your fulcrum, okay? So then you take these back fingers, okay, and you're gonna very carefully wrap them around the stick. And notice that I have no air gaps. They're nice and evenly laid out across the back end of the stick. And that's pretty much your grip, all right? I wanna make note that the back fingers stay on the stick at all times. You don't wanna do tea time, okay? Tea time refers to the pinkies flailing out, your back fingers flaring. You wanna stay away from that, all right? So I also wanna mention that it's not a death grip, so you do want that stick to have a little bit of wiggle room back there. That will allow the stick to breathe a little bit. Because if you're over tightening and real quick, as a quick exercise, if you take the stick in your hand and squeeze it as hard as you possibly can, you may notice some of the blood displacing on your nail. I don't know if you can see it in the camera here, but you can see that my thumbnail is white at the edge because I'm squeezing so tight. You're actually displacing blood and over gripping, and you're not going to achieve the same kind of rebound as you would if you just relax your grip and allow the stick to do most of the work. So that's basically the right hand in a nutshell. If we were in person, we would be doing all kinds of extra exercises, but for now, that's the basic approach to the right hand. So quads and bass drums, this is identical with your left hand as we're basically playing match grip. So just as a quick review, thumb is going straight up the side of the stick. Okay, your pointer finger is almost making a cross behind it. You're gonna close up that grip in there, wrap those back digits around, and you might be able to see in this camera here that for bass drums and for quads, you're gonna approach this as sort of a 45-degree angle, more or less. All right, snare drums are gonna be a little different, but we're gonna approach it as a 45-degree angle. Now, my stand is a little high right now. Mine's for a snare drum traditional grip, but for basses and quads, your stand may sit a little lower. Your stand may be like belt height, because it's important to note that your sticks in playing position should go down into the head. All right, so bass drums, I'm also assuming right now that we're playing on a flat drum with match grip like a snare drum would. I wouldn't expect you to necessarily have a bass pad. If you do, that's awesome. But for now, we'll assume that your audition is gonna be flat drum match grip. All right, so this would be a little lower, and this would have a very natural approach going into the pad. Okay, so snare drums hold our left hand just a little bit different. We hold it in traditional grip. So quads and basses, you can play along or hang loose for a second. So the equivalent of our fulcrum, we had talked about this pinching motion, the fulcrum put together with your thumb and pointer finger. The equivalent of that is your thumb and your pointer finger, but jammed right in between. Okay, so this motion right here is basically our foundation for our fulcrum. So the fulcrum pivots around here. Okay? So the first thing you're going to want to do is take your ring finger, that's the one next to your pinky, all right, and you're going to support the stick right on top of the nail, otherwise known as the cuticle, but you can think of it as the nail. One common error that we find with students coming into the college level is that most students place the stick in between knuckles, okay? And I think the one thing you really want to get in the habit of doing is placing the stick actually on the nail, okay, as opposed to on the knuckle. Because check this out. Here, you're going to lose all kinds of control. This is going to gain you a lot more support under the stick. If you find yourself always slipping off this way, okay, you can always take tape and wrap that finger around the stick to support it. Is it true technique? No, because just like we talked about in the right hand, the stick should breathe. It should come off and on within a half an inch or so. But it's a good way to keep practicing with your finger on. Okay. So as of now, we have the stick jammed between these two. Okay, and then we're going to take our ring finger, going to put it under. Next, we're going to take our pinky. Okay, and our pinky is going to go right under our ring finger, okay? And the pinky is going to support the ring finger, supporting the underbelly of the stick. Next, we're going to take our pointer finger, and we're going to wrap it around the top, all right? Now, note that my thumb is sticking up, and I'm making a connection between my thumb and my pointer finger, okay? That's super important. A lot of students come in and they play like this. Okay, the thumb is actually on top. Well, look at all that wiggle room. Okay, the stick moves around. Okay, there's no actual grip on the stick. You're just gripping your fingers. All right, so one way to keep a good solid grip in your fulcrum is to wrap that finger around and keep your thumb facing up. You should be able to touch the inside of your thumb pad. So with all that said, we're left with sort of a questionable gesture here, right? So what we're going to do is take that middle finger and wrap it around, and you'll notice that we have a nice, evenly placed bottom four fingers. All right, all fingers are touching the stick. And just like I said with the right hand, it's important that that stick does have, let's see if I can show it here, does have a little bit of wiggle room. If you overgrip and don't let the stick breathe, you're going to end up having no rebound, okay? So it's a nice balance of having a firm grip, okay? No one should be able to come up to you and pull that stick out of you, okay? So the grip should be firm enough that no one takes the stick out, but also loose enough that it breathes when you play. So for snare drums and bass drums, we're gonna use the middle of the drum pad as our primary playing zones, okay? And as part of our basic approach, you'll notice for snare drum that my beads are a little more than 90 degrees, okay? We had talked about quads and bass drums being closer to 45, and you'll also notice that I roll my hands over versus snare drum, where this right hand is basically on top, palm down. This will allow me to have a good solid wrist turn. Everything we do is directed from the wrist, and we'll talk about that in stroke styles in a little bit, but for now, feel all of this from the wrist, okay? Wrist-directed stroke. So just to reiterate, snares and bass drums, we are using the middle of the drum pad, and what I like to say is that the beads should be as close without physically touching, and they should be as close as physically possible to the drum head or drum pad without touching, okay? That's what we call playing position. And I'll refer to this in multiple instances throughout this series. So for snare drums, our playing position is 2 beads evenly placed right in the middle of the head, not quite touching, but very close. And then both the left and right stick are going down into the head. All right, from this camera angle, you can see that my right stick is going down. My bead is actually lower than the butt end of the stick. Okay, that's super important and something that most younger students, they come in and they play flat to the drum, and that's gonna send all of the heights off. Okay, so playing position refers to down into the head, and same applies with the left hand traditional. Okay, the butt is actually higher than the bead and it goes down into the head. All right, this creates a frame from your upper chest to the drum, outside to both arms. Okay, this is our frame. For bass drums and quads, this frame is going to involve elbows closer in, a relaxed approach, and your outer hands are actually going to curl over, not quite French grip, right, but more of a 90-degree angle. Cool? So let's talk about some basic strokes. There are two stroke styles that we refer to often. The first one is legato or an upstroke. All right, now while there may be some subtle differences between the two, we often use them interchangeably. An upstroke refers to a full rebounded stroke starting at one height, bouncing off the head, ending at another height. Okay, it's a relaxed rebounded stroke. You notice that it's a one motion. There's a smooth pendulum-like motion to it. There's a lot of fluidity, all right, and the stick is doing most of the work. Now, we're not really going to get into velocity, but notice that at a full stroke, and for those of you who know the heights, and we'll review the heights in a moment, but for those of you who understand the heights, we're referring to a full stroke as a 15-inch stroke. All right, so I'm adding a lot of velocity going down into the head and then allowing the stick to bounce it back up. Okay, notice I'm not doing this. I'm not rebounding halfway and then pulling the stick back up. I'm allowing the stick to rebound all the way. All right, so on your own right now, take that grip we talked about, go perpendicular to the ground, and make sure that we're talking a wrist-directed stroke. And I want you to throw down the stick as hard as you can, or as fast as you can, and rebound. You're going to use your back fingers to catch that rebound at a perpendicular to the ground. Okay. So as we go up, as we have that upstroke, the fingers guide that rebound, all right? And your fingers are actually the very thing that stops the stick from going past 15, okay? This is a huge no-no. At no point in our technique program does the stick go past perpendicular to the ground, all right? So if we ever use arm, the stick will actually travel up, okay? But at no point does the bead ever go past the wrist. All right, so as we do this small little exercise, we're stopping the stick at that 15-inch stroke. Okay, so let's talk about the opposite. The opposite is a staccato stroke, or otherwise known as a downstroke. All right, starting the stick in the same spot, we're going to actually stop the stick in playing position. Okay, so if I were to have what we considered a proper playing position, a downstroke would actually stop in that same playing position. Okay, so we approach the upper end the same way. Now the only difference is when we stop the stick, we're going to put on the brakes. Okay, these back fingers are actually the brakes, so you're going to just apply a little pressure to stop the stick. All right. That will stop the stick in that downward motion, that angle down into the head that we talked about earlier, okay? As opposed to this, where now my stick is more level with the ground, all right? We want to stop it down into the head. All right, so nothing about the grip changes, and you also want to make sure that it doesn't rebound too far, and then you adjust to go down in the head. A lot of people do something like this. Okay, now I'm of course, exaggerating a little bit. I'm also doing it slower, but they'll rebound to 3 or 6 and then adjust that to go down, kind of like that. Okay, that's cheating. That's not a true downstroke as we see it. Okay, you want to stop the stick in playing position. So just a couple differences between the upstroke, legato stroke, and the downstroke, staccato stroke. Here's an upstroke, and here's some downstrokes. So what do we do with these stroke styles? Well, we measure these stroke styles in terms of height and corresponds with a particular dynamic. That's how we create a wide dynamic range on the marching field. So if you refer to page 5 in our packet, you'll see our height chart. You'll see that 15-inch is basically perpendicular with the ground and the playing surface, and it goes all the way down to playing position, which in this chart you'll see known as tacit. And just as a quick review, some of you may not be familiar with this term tacit. Tacit means any time your stick is at rest, right? If I'm playing some legatos, right, that left hand in that first bar is at tacit because it's not moving. All right, same thing, if I were to play with my left hand, that right hand is at tacit. That right hand should not be moving. This maintains a professional approach, and it also allows you to concentrate on the stick that you're actually playing with. So in this case, playing position is also referred to as tacit position. All right, so let's dive in and kind of define some of these heights. So the first one is what I think is the easiest to define. It's the 15-inch stroke, otherwise known as the fortissimo stroke. So if you take a look at my the side view here, you can see that I'm turning my wrist with a wrist-directed stroke. I'm not using my arm. Okay, if I were to use my arm, it would be going on this hinge. Okay, we don't want to think about the arm yet. Let's think of all of these heights turning from the wrist. All right, so you're going to keep your arm at rest. You're going to turn from your wrist, and you'll see that this is perpendicular to the ground. That's what we call a 15-inch stroke or fortissimo. This is usually our louder moments. Warm-up legatos, we'll be playing loud with high velocity here, okay? From there, if we take that 15-inch stroke and take a little bit off of it, we have 12, okay? Otherwise known as forte. Sometimes it creeps into the fortissimo as well. I would say 12 is one of the most common heights that we play and one that you should become most familiar with. So if you think 15, perpendicular with the ground, take a little bit off of it, you got 12. Okay. Now I'm going to skip over 9 and actually go back to tacit for a moment. You remember that playing position or tacit position means that we're going down into the head, meaning the bead is lower than the butt. Well, the reason why we do this is because 3-inch is actually parallel with the playing surface or the ground. Okay. Tacit position, playing position, and 3-inch. So if you notice, the bead is at the same height as the butt. Okay? From there, we angle a little bit up to 6, and now for the first time in the lower heights, our bead is now higher than the butt. Okay, so as a review, playing position down into the head, 3-inch, we are now parallel with the head, 6-inch, we now have the bead above the butt, okay? So now our 9 is simply in between 6 and 12, naturally. So what I like to say is everyone get comfortable with your 6-inch strokes, okay? And then just add a little something, something on the end, all right? All right, if you emphasize your 6-inch strokes, you'll get to 9. So as a quick review, let's start from the bottom, and we're going to go tacit position. Again, I'm going to say this 100 times, but the stick goes down into the head. The bead is lower than the butt. All right, we're going to lift to 3. Okay, and you can do this along with me at home too. So now the stick is parallel with the head. Now we're going to angle up, And now for the first time, the bead is above the butt. And we're going to continue up, 9, up a little further. We're at 12, and then finally ending with perpendicular to the ground, we have 15, okay? So I want everyone at home to take your stick, whether that's a match grip or a traditional grip, and let's go ahead and find playing position. Now be very critical about this. We had talked about both sticks go down into the head, okay? We had talked about the beads being as close as possible in the center of the drum if you are a bass and snare drum. And if you're a quad, you can feel it on the bottom third, maybe bottom fourth of your drum. That will give a lot of resonance as opposed to hitting it in the node, which is going to produce a less desirable sound. So quads, you can go ahead and practice on that bottom area while the snares and bass drums can be in the middle. Okay. Be very critical of this playing position because this is what everything you do stems off of. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and turn to 3-inch with me. So now both sticks are parallel with the head. Now crack up. Now the beads are above the butts, and go up to 9, 12, and 15 will be perpendicular to the ground. Okay, so if you do this correctly, that stick is going to travel in a straight line perpendicular to the head. So if this is about perpendicular, that stick is going to travel straight up and down. Here are some common things a lot of people run into. Some people slice out. Some people slice in. And that all has to do with your wrist over here. So it's very important. One trick that I did when I was learning was I placed myself in front of a mirror and I angled myself so the stick travels straight up and down. Now I can't see my reflection in the camera, but if that were a mirror, I'd be able to see, is my stick traveling this way? Is it traveling away, or is it traveling up and down? And from there, you kind of diagnose by moving your wrist. So I can't emphasize enough to get a mirror in front of you, practice your heights, and make sure we have a straight travel path. Okay. So from there, that's the height system. So you'll see in your music and in the packet, most of our dynamics, if not all the dynamics, are written as numbers, not as dynamics. So it's that detailed. So if you ever see, say, like a 12/6, that's referring to all accents are written at a 12-inch height and all taps are written as a 6-inch height, just as an example. And if you have a block of all heights, sometimes we have all 15 or all 3 or whatever, that'll just be written as one height, and then every note from there is laid out. So we talked about upstrokes and downstrokes. We mentioned heights. Let's go ahead and implement that in our first exercise. So go ahead, in our packet, you're going to go to El Gato Legatos. That is our legato stroke exercise. All right, and if you look at it bar by bar, it's pretty simple, but there's a lot of mechanical things happening. So the first bar, we have all rights, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The second bar, we have all lefts, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then the next 2 bars, we have rights, and then the whole thing repeats. So you can think of it as a big paradiddle in terms of bars, right, left, right, left, left, and then we'll end with a right release. So I'm going to play it through for you real quick. Here we go. Cool. All right. So there's some things going on here I want to point out. So in the very first bar, we have the majority of upstrokes, legato strokes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But you noticed on the and of count 4, anytime there's a hand-to-hand transition, we go into a downstroke. Up, 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 downstroke. Same with the left. Up, 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 downstroke. All right. So that allows you to have an upstroke on the opposite hand and have a clean hand-to-hand transition. So one thing I invite you to do at home is practice 1 bar at a time and think of it as up, 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 down. and using that and a 4 as a downbeat, upbeat reference rather. Down. And again. Down. And again. Okay, and then of course in the segments, say bars 3 and 4, and then again on 7 and 8, when you have 2 in a row, your downbeat, your downstroke would be on the second bar. So you would have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 down. Okay, so let's go ahead and play this together. I'm going to take a moment to put on my Bluetooth headset, and let's start in playing position. All right, be critical. Remember, we talked about sticks going down into the head, beads as close together without actually touching. And for snares and basses, we're in the middle of the head, and quads, we are more towards the edge. So here we go. Let's go ahead and play that again. Cool. Now let's go ahead and play that at a faster tempo. Now that time you might have noticed that I have a sticks up and a sticks down. That's because we don't actually do a sticks in before and after our exercises and oftentimes in the show book. So in order to properly do this along with me, let's make sure that our hands and arms relax down at the side. And then on beat 3, before the downbeat, we're going to come up into playing position. Okay, so it looks something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, up, and 1. Okay, so I like to say we're going from a picture to a picture. Okay, we're not being lackadaisical, all right, and lazy in between. It's one motion that happens very quick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1. Now at the end of the exercise, unlike most drum lines who come either in on 2 or down on 2, we're going to come down on count 3. So we got 1, 2, down. Okay, so it looks something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, up and attack. And then at the end of the exercise, we have 1, 2, down. So I'm going to start to do that now. So go ahead and play that with me. We're going to play that at the same tempo. Here we go. Let's try it again. Down. Let's go ahead and try one more time. Here we go. And down. Cool. So a couple other observations. Because this is a single height exercise, we're going to want to make sure that all of our heights are at the same height every note, every time, okay? I don't practice as often as I should, but you definitely should be practicing often, and this is something that you should be striving to. Now, I would, go home, take a look at this at all heights and all tempos. Now, we played a little bit on the faster range, but definitely start this at a slower tempo with a relaxed rebound stroke, making sure we're stroking that out with the wrist. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that, yes, everything we do is a wrist-directed stroke, but there should be a very relaxed motion in the arm, okay? So when I say wrist-directed stroke, I don't want you to limit it to only your wrist. okay? That adds a lot of tension in your forearm. Definitely allow your elbow and your arm to be relaxed and allow the wrist to do most of the work, and then allow this to be an extension of that, okay? So let's talk about double height exercise. So in your battery packet, go ahead and flip to 6-on-4. This is our accent tap exercise, okay? So as the exercise is written, it's assumed that the taps are played at 3-inch taps and the accents are played at 12-inch accents. That may change depending on the speed of which we're playing and whatever it is we're working on, but for the sake of the exercise, you can assume those heights, okay? So you notice that the first 2 bars look very similar to legatos, only they're now at taps. This is to set up both tap sound and the feel of what a tap sounds like. So because there are more taps than accents, we want to make sure that we hone in on that consistent tone, ta, 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 and then simply lift your stick for the accents to create a different sound. All right, so let's go ahead and play the first 2 bars together, and I'll count you off. Here we go. We got 1, 2, and 1 and 2 and ready and go, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 down, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 down, 1. Okay, so if we end an if we end an exercise in the middle, or even if we end the exercise at the end, we want to make sure that we end with a downstroke, but we want to make sure we end at the correct height. Okay, oftentimes a younger drumline, a less experienced drumline will end with a Thor hammer, right? Yeah, finish the exercise, right? And that's true with legatos too. If we end with the legatos, we want to make sure we end with an even height and it's not any more or less articulated. It's just the correct stroke type. All right, so let's play those first 2 bars again, ending with an accent. 1, 2, and 1 and 2 and 3 and play, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and stop. Okay, so let's go ahead and play through this one time. And what you're going to want to do is lift with your wrists. All right, these are all wrist-directed strokes, and as I mentioned before, your arm is going to naturally move. Okay, at the end of every accent, you're going to stop the stick and reinitiate the new height at 3. Okay, in other words, you don't want to have an accent and then lift with your elbow and cheat a little tippity tap in there. Okay, you want to make sure we have a full stroke at 12, stopping the stick, reinitiate for 3. So all of these are individual heights. So let's play 6-on-4. Here we go. So there's a couple things I want to point out in here. The first 2 bars we had talked about sets up the feel and the sound of a tap, but one thing I didn't mention yet is something called quality of sound. Okay, quality of sound refers to the maximum amount of velocity for each stroke. Now we'll dive into velocity and some of these other terms a little more in detail when we get together, but think of velocity as quickness of your stroke. Right? We had talked about an upstroke having a quick velocity so it bounces up quicker, but it also impacts the amount of sound, right? So I can play taps with a very low, slow velocity, or I can play taps with a higher velocity and the quality of sound is different. rhythmically, if you take a look at 17 and 18, bars 17 and 18, quads, you have a different rhythm. You have 1 and 2 and E, 1 and 2 and E. Okay, those should be felt as upstrokes. Up, 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 up. Okay, and everyone in the battery in the last 3 bars, 1 and a 3 and 1 and a 3, and those are 2 upstrokes followed by a downstroke. Okay, 1 and a, 1 and a. Okay, so think of that as up, up, downstroke, up, down, up, up, down, up, down. And then the last bar, we have 1 E and a 2 E and a 1. Should be felt as all upstrokes, very fluid, legato strokes, with the exception of a 1, the last 2 beats should be felt as downstrokes. Okay, so let's go ahead and play through this a little quicker. And give me a moment to put on my headphones here. And this time we're going to play at 9-3. 9-3. Here we go. So I know it feels like we're just starting to dig in, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. I encourage you to ask any question you have, type it in the comments. We'll come back and try to get to all of your questions. You can also go to kumubears.com/drumline and you'll find the email address of myself and Danny there. Feel free to email us any specific things that you have heard or seen or want to know in this live stream. Also, stay tuned for future parts where we break down all of the battery exercises and talk about audition requirements. We'll also have a front ensemble and cymbal live stream, so stay tuned for some really great content. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.